Okay, welcome everyone to Employer Insights. Today we will be featuring PwC and asking some questions to really get a sense for what recruiting is looking like now during COVID-19 and other challenges that are facing our students as they're looking for jobs and internships. Today, if you would like a copy of the recording, please know that this webinar is being recorded. And if you look in the chat box, there is a link, a Google form that you can sign in and fill out, and we will then send the recording to you at that time. After we ask some Q&A questions with our featured panelists today, we will also open up a Q&A for those who are attending, and you'll be using the question and answer feature for that. So please place any questions that you might have in the question and answer feature versus the chat. And so let's go ahead and get started. Just want to introduce your co-hosts today. My name is Anita Manuel, and I'm the Associate Director for Career Education. And I'm joined by my colleague, Lisa. Lisa, you want to introduce yourself? She's on mute. You're on mute.
Sorry about that. Yes, my name is Lisa Tchaikovsky. I'm the Employer Engagement, the Assistant Director of Employer Engagement. I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy that we have Zulika here from PwC. Thank you.
And today, yes, welcome to Zulika Pena. She's the Talent Acquisition Associate for PwC, and she's our featured guest today. And we are really excited to be able to have a chance to chat with you and learn more about some of your insights as you're working firsthand in recruiting new college talent. So welcome to our first Employer Insights.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Great. So we're going to just jump into it. I'm going to check the chat really quickly because it looks like there might be a few questions that are coming in. I just want to let everyone know that if you do have questions for Zulika, we will be having a Q&A session towards the end. So if you want to put your questions in the Q&A box, that's where we'll be looking for those questions. But let's just get into getting some of your insights. So if you can just start with maybe telling us a little bit about your role at PwC and how you first got started in the field.
Sure. So I always answer this question by saying that my journey at PwC was definitely very unique and not, I think, the common one. So I started my career with the firm back as a junior. I went to San Jose State, similarly to all of you, and at the time I was looking for an internship. I took a core assurance, so external audit internship at PwC as a junior, graduated from San Jose State, and then started full-time in our core assurance practice in the San Jose office. Did core assurance for about 3.5 years, so made it to senior associate, and then just really started to get really involved in recruiting events on campus and found that that was such an impactful way to give back as a fellow alumni. So really started to get interested in how to participate more in recruiting events, had the opportunity to join the team, so could not turn that down and decided to take my chance there. I've been a part of the recruiting team for a little over a year now and have really enjoyed my time here so far. So again, a little bit of a unique journey there, but nonetheless, it's been a great experience so far.
So it's awesome to also know that you're alumna. And so a lot of our students who may be listening, if you are in the business college, you can also maybe ask some questions or get to know which courses or experiences you felt were most helpful in preparing you for launching your career.
Okay. Many students worry about finding internships and jobs in the economy and environment. What are your top tips for job internship search during these challenging times?
So this is a great question for sure, and one that I think we get most commonly asked by students is, what can I do and what should I be doing? And we understand that, you know, in these times, things are looking very different. In a virtual environment, you're not really sure how to connect with employers, how to really better your chances of standing out as part of the application process. And these are all very fair concerns to have. So I tell students the best way that you can really put yourself out there is really engage with the employer. Find, you know, some of the events that they're hosting, even if they are virtual. I encourage you to attend one, if not more, as your schedule allows, because that's really the only way that these days us as recruiters and your fellow employers can really connect with you and get an opportunity to get to know you better. That way, when we're reviewing applications, if I'm looking at your name, I can, you know, say this person attended the event. I know what they look like. I know a little bit more about them. So that really helps us. So definitely encourage you to attend all the virtual events that you can in the employer that you're interested in. And also just really staying connected with us. I know that that can be challenging as well. So I would say the best way to stay connected, aside from events, is, you know, email us if you have any questions. Feel free to ask us general questions about maybe our own journey. If you'd like to connect with some of our professionals, for example, at PwC, we're setting up virtual one-on-one chats. That's a great opportunity for you to stay connected with other professionals as part of the recruiting process. So really just finding out what your employer is doing and what events they're hosting, and really putting your best foot forward to attend as many of those as you can.
That's a great tip. I think the next question will actually be somewhat related to that, because students sometimes are not sure what this virtual work environment looks like. So can you explain a little bit about what students can expect from a virtual internship? Are internships still happening, and how do they best prepare for success in this virtual environment?
Yeah, definitely. So for us, being a professional services firm, a lot of our work deals with client deliverables and just that face-to-face client time. So these times have been a real challenge for the firm to really adjust in the way that we are still connecting with our clients and are still providing our interns and our incoming full-time associates the experience and the exposure that I'm sure they would be anticipating to have in person, that unfortunately, because of these times, they cannot. So having our first round of interns just go through the virtual internship this summer, I can tell you the feedback was a lot more positive than we were anticipating, at least on the recruiting side of things. We got some really positive feedback about just the preparation being there beforehand. So the right training around the platforms that you would be expected to use. So at the firm, we use Google Meet for pretty much everything and anything. If not, we're using WebEx. We don't typically use Zoom. So those are really the two platforms that you can expect to use as part of your virtual internship. And I think having gone through those training sessions and that preparation beforehand is really helpful. And I also think you're probably wondering, what type of work am I really going to be doing if it is virtual and I'm not at the client? Am I going to get that same type of exposure, and what is that going to look like? So luckily for you, your engagement teams are accessible virtually. So they're very excited to just have interns help out. I think it's a great way for you to still feel excited about the fact that you're going to be connecting with a team that you're assigned to, and all of these client meetings at the point that you are coming in as an intern. Luckily, by then we have already figured out a way to still meet with our clients. So you're not at the start of things where maybe it wasn't as smooth of a process. By now we definitely have it sorted out. So getting that exposure to what a client meeting would look like, and also working on some of the client deliverables, are definitely something that is part of the virtual internship.
A quick follow-up question on that. Are there any ways that students can best express or connect their experiences in class, or those projects that they're doing, that might highlight to you that they would have good experience that would transfer to client relation work?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I would say any type of project or deliverable that you worked on as part of your coursework, or even as part of like a club or an organization, something that you put together, is definitely relevant for you to list out on your resume. I think whenever I want to say this for myself as a recruiter, whenever I'm looking through a resume and I see maybe projects or additional work that students have worked on, I find that relevant because I think it really shows that you have initiative, you really have those leadership skills, and you're leading a project, which we all know in college, you don't have a full team of fully functioning students always on your team. So just showing that you can complete that and really take ownership for the deliverable really shows to me that you're probably a standout candidate that I should be considering, especially if you don't have, you know, a ton of work experience coming into the application process, which I know for myself as a junior, when I was applying to internships, I had no like accounting or even audit related work experience. So I had the same concern, and I really focused on highlighting some of the projects that I was working on in my coursework, as well as just any external experience through volunteering or clubs and orgs. I really made sure to highlight that on my resume because those soft skills are really important in this professional service industry that we work in.
That's really helpful to hear, because I think a lot of our students are concerned that they don't have enough experience even to apply for the internships, and so sometimes minimize their class projects, especially a lot of the collaboration that they do. And so to kind of have you say that even as a student, you use those as a way to first get your stepping stone into that internship is really kind of helpful to hear. I just want to take a quick break in our questions before Lisa asks the next one. It looks like we have students that are now able, a lot more students were getting into the room now. Looks like we had a little snafu with a password issue. If you're just joining us, we just started, so you didn't miss very much. But there is a check-in form in the chat. It's a Google form. If you can go ahead and click on that, that will enable you to get a copy of the recording. So we are recording this, so all of the previous questions, the first few questions that we asked are recorded. So if you fill out that form, we will send the copy of the recording to you so you didn't miss anything. And we are now moving into the next question. If you have questions that we don't ask or you'd like to have some more expansion upon, the Q&A box is where you'll be asking those questions, and myself and Lisa will go through those and make sure that Zulika gets those questions as well. Okay, so next question for Zulika, Lisa is up here, and let me bring it up so everyone can see what we're going to be asking, but it's resumes now. We're transitioning to resumes.
Okay, so what did the best resume you've seen have or do that made that candidate stand out? Do you have a good example that you can share?
Yes.
We can
so
share.
I will say that, yes, I can definitely share a good example, but also you're probably expecting for me to say some really big answer on standout things. And really at the end of the day, it comes down to just basic, simple, good format and having everything that I'm looking for checked off. So for me specifically, at least in the space that I'm recruiting in, I am looking for candidates in core assurance and tax, which comes with that CPA eligibility requirement. So that for me as an employer is something that I'm looking at. So when I see a good resume, to me that looks like someone who has the right font, nothing that's like too challenging or too out there to read. So really nothing fancy, just something that's simple to read. You have an objective on, you know, what you're looking to accomplish. So maybe your objective is to get an internship in one particular line of service or get a full-time opportunity. That objective really highlights to me what you're looking to get out of the application process. Also just highlighting your education. So this is one that is fairly commonly missed. You tell me that you're going to San Jose State, you tell me your major, but then I don't see your GPA on there. And the assumption that I'm gonna make is it's not on there because it's pretty low, so it's probably bad. And 9 out of the 10 times that I ask, it's not a bad GPA, just students forget to put it on there for whatever reason. So definitely do not forget to put that on there. After that, I would say I really just take a moment to browse through your work experience. So I don't take a super detailed review. As you can imagine, we look at so many of these. But again, just highlighting the most relevant and also the most recent work experiences that you have is probably going to be the most helpful, both for yourself as you're being interviewed. I think having the most relevant and most recent is probably to your best interest. So no need to tell me about, you know, things that you did in high school. That was well a ways away from college. So definitely the most relevant and recent is useful there. And I would say something that I've recently found is somewhat of a joy to read on resumes is when students tell me about some of their hobbies and interests in maybe that like additional skills or awards section that some students include on their resume. So telling me that maybe you're a Dean Scholar, what clubs and orgs you participate in, but also some of the hobbies and interests that you have and putting those on there is actually really helpful in me getting to know you better and me being able to have that conversation with you. And I also think that's helpful as you're going through the interview process because your interviewer already gets a feel for, you know, some of the personality standouts that come with you as a candidate.
So of course, while you're answering, I'm checking the Q&A box really quickly. And I think common follow-up question is, what is actually considered a good GPA?
Yes, so for me particularly and for PwC, we consider 3.0 and above to be manageable for the application process. If you're below a 3.0, unfortunately, I'm probably not gonna be able to consider you. So 3.0 really is the minimum for us. That by no means, you know, is gonna guarantee that you're gonna go through the interview process because again, being that the minimum, you're gonna see a lot of candidates that are spread out between that 3.0, 4.0 range. So for me, if it's anywhere below a 3.0, then unfortunately I can't consider just because of the volume of candidates.
Got it, okay, that makes sense. I mean, if there's gotta be a way to cut off some of the ability to screen through the amount of volume that you get. Our next question is related to LinkedIn because especially in this virtual environment, many of the employers that we work with state that they are scouting talent through LinkedIn or using LinkedIn recruiter features. Do you at PwC use LinkedIn? And if so, how do you use it to source talent? And do you have any top tips of what students should be doing or not doing on LinkedIn?
Yeah, so I will say for PwC, we use LinkedIn more as a tool for us to stay connected with the candidates that we see coming through, not necessarily as a tool for us to source talent. Although sometimes for whatever reason, I'll have students just be suggested to me as part of my recruiter profile. And if I see that you're one of the schools that I'm recruiting at, then I might just reach out and invite you to an upcoming event because it definitely can't hurt. But it is not really where we look to in terms of just sourcing our talent. But having said that, I really think that some of the really good ways and top tips to use LinkedIn would just be to really connect with, you know, the professionals that you're meeting at these events and also your recruiter. I specifically think it's helpful when students add like a specific note on like, hey, it was nice to meet you at this event that I attended. I like to keep pretty detailed notes of who I meet, but as you can imagine with all of the events, sometimes I forget. So it's always really nice when students include that note and remind me, hey, like I was at this event and this is how we met. So I think that's very useful and just kind of opens it up in a less awkward way than someone just connecting with you and not including anything, which was something that I wish I knew as a student, because as a student, you just think, oh, let me just connect with someone, it's easy. But these like extra touches really help you stand out. So that would be one of the things that I think is really useful. On what not to do, I want to say I do have students message me on LinkedIn, and it's great that you're messaging me. Unfortunately, it's not the best way for me to just stay in touch with you. So I will regularly check my email, especially as we're, you know, at peak recruiting season for the fall. So maybe a few days will pass on LinkedIn and I won't be checking it. So if it's something that is going to be more of an ongoing conversation or you're just going to have more follow-up questions, then I definitely suggest that email is the way that you message a recruiter or potential employers. Just from a visibility perspective, it makes it a lot easier for us to not forget to check things.
A quick follow-up question before I move to the next one on the email piece. sometimes I think we get concerned, like if students don't want to bombard recruiters with emails, but how do they best stand out in a sea of emails of candidates that you're getting? Does the subject and line in the email make a huge difference, or what can they do to catch your attention if they're emailing you directly?
Yeah, so I will say, for me, the subject line doesn't matter too much unless it's going to help me identify, again, maybe where we met. Maybe it's a thank you note from a follow-up event that you attended. I think that is a very acceptable subject line. I'm never skipping student emails. It takes me longer, but I like to say that I check through all of my emails and try and get a response to every student because, again, I understand how hard it is, especially in these times. So I just want to be as conscious of that and try to get back to students within a day or so. But I will say we do get a lot of emails, and there's really no point in, I want to say, focusing so much on the subject line, maybe just the content of it. I would say students who really stand out to me are those who come with really great questions. Even if it's in an email, right? I'm still gonna remember that you asked some great follow-up questions and you're really doing your research and showing me that even through an email. It's gonna show me, okay, this candidate is really engaged with us. They're really, going above and beyond in looking through our website, making sure that they come prepared, because I can tell you I get, 10 to 20 emails with the same question. Where do I find this link? Or what is the major requirement for this? So all of those just kind of tend to get thrown into the same bucket, so your visibility goes down versus you emailing me more unique questions that show me, okay, you went through the basic standard questions that a student might ask, and these are kind of the next level that you're asking me.
That makes good sense. Okay, next question, Lisa.
Okay, so students would like to know, can you share with us how your organization supports diversity and inclusion in the hiring, in the hiring and development of employees of various backgrounds and experiences?
Yeah, definitely. So I personally love this question, and I'm happy to share my own experience. So for me, I'm a first-gen graduate from San Jose State, and I come from a fully Latino family. So no one in my family had any idea what college was. They were like, what is accounting? Does it pay well? Is it stable? That sounds great, honey. I hope you, do well in this. So it is really challenging as a diverse student to find the right opportunity where you feel like you're taking a job that not only is going to pay you what you need to get by, but also is going to further develop you as part of your career. And I really think that I chose PwC because they really stuck out to me in what they do to continue to professionally develop their employees. So right off the bat, I knew that they have specific internship programs for some of our diverse candidates. So that already was unique to a lot of the employers that maybe I was talking to 5 years ago when I graduated. I'll go ahead and date myself. But these days, I'm sure that these programs are a lot more available. But for me at the time, that was something that stuck out to me. And I think over the years, if anything, and especially this year, PwC has really shown that they are really taking the first step and really breaking ground when it comes to what they're doing to address the current situation around our D&I efforts. So again, making sure that we are expanding on our recruiting efforts and really making sure that we get our diverse candidates what they need, continuing the conversations around, what is the firm doing and what is it looking like for some of our diverse candidates as they're coming in terms of their professional development. Are we getting them the right mentorship and the right, coaching team for them to further develop? And I think for me as a student, when they told me that I was going to be assigned a coaching team at PwC who was really going to be there to support me along my career, I never really understood how important that was going to be at the time. I knew that it was something that was different from other employers and what they were offering me. But after having been here for 5 years, I can tell you that coaching team has really shifted my perspective in how I look at my career and what I've been able to do as a professional to further develop. So I think overall as a firm, all of the initiatives that they're keeping up with and really, you know, taking the time to do has shown that the effort is very much worth it with our diverse candidates.
That's good to hear, especially that the organization makes an effort to provide the resources versus, I think sometimes when students transition into the world of work or a particular organization, it's really hard to identify who's open to supporting you or who's open to giving you kind of frank insights. And so to have a program or something formalized makes it so much easier when you're onboarding to a new organization. The last main area that we'll ask, and then we do have some questions popping up in the Q&A that we'll go ahead and ask you directly, is that navigating the interview process. Lots of students want to know how they can best prepare for the interviews, and are there some very specific questions that they should really be aware of during the interview process? I know your specific, we'll talk about what you're recruiting for at this time. Well, the next opportunity will be your slide where you can show the different opportunities for students. But if you can also go into salary negotiation and what that might look like, I think that seems to be a big question mark for a lot of students. Like, do I have the ability to negotiate? How can I best do so?
Yeah, definitely. And that's definitely a good question to come up. I'll go ahead and address the interview process question first. So for us at PwC, virtual interviews are definitely something that we've had for at least 2 years now. So fortunately for us, we're better equipped for these times in moving all of our interviews to being virtual. In terms of the content, I think a lot of students think, okay, am I gonna get some really big technical accounting question that I won't be prepared for or won't know how to answer? I want to tell you, you should not focus very much on the technical aspect. A majority of the questions that are going to be asked of you are going to be strictly behavioral. So I tell students the best way to prepare for that is really knowing your resume and knowing what you put on there. You definitely do not want to be in this interview asked about a project that maybe was like a year or two ago that you're not super fresh and familiar with and maybe have to dig a little bit more. That's definitely not something that you want to happen to you as part of the interview process. So definitely know your resume before you come to that. For us at PwC, we use what we call our Pwc Professional Framework to come up with all of the behavioral questions. And if students Google this, just Pwc Professional Framework, I think it's like the second one that comes up in the search results. It'll show you all of the dimensions that we're looking for in a PwC professional. And just knowing that the questions that are going to be targeted for you as part of the interview process are really coming from those dimensions.
You guys provide a cheat sheet, basically. If we just Google the professional framework, the highlights of what is expected during that process will be there.
Yes, yeah, basically. I mean, it's all of the dimensions on what we, like when you're a current PwC employee, this is a framework that you're evaluated on as part of your, you know, evaluation for the year. So similarly, when you're coming in for interviews as an intern or a full-time associate, we're looking to those same dimensions, asking you questions about you and your experience to see how well you fit into our framework and see if you'd be, you know, the right fit for our organization.
Just taking a moment to type that into the chat. So if all of you are looking for what that was, I just typed it into the chat of the professional framework that you can Google. I know that you're speaking on behalf of PwC specifically, but I would recommend all students, even if you're looking at different employers, look at that, because we commonly find that most employers are seeking the same types of skill sets from students that they're going to be asking behavioral interview questions on. So I'm assuming there's probably going to be questions related to leadership, ability to learn and learn quickly, collaboration and team spirit, critical thinking and analysis, and maybe global ability to understand global movement and trends. So that framework might be really helpful to practice for other interviews as well.
Yeah, definitely. And also did want to address your salary negotiation question. So I would assume that this is going to be different, again, depending on where you're applying to, but I want to say for PwC and just the other big four firms, we encounter this often where, you know, we have a candidate who's not just interviewing with us, they're also considering their options, as is fair to them with other firms in the big four space. So what we often find is there's salary differences that sometimes are very minimal, but as a student, as you can imagine, you're very embarrassed to ask anything. You almost feel like it's wrong to ask these questions and bring it up. And I want to tell students that is definitely the wrong approach. You can feel completely comfortable to come to us with that. You don't have to, you know, discuss specifics right off the bat, but you can tell us, hey, you know, I have not just a PwC offer, but offers from other firms. And I'm noticing that there's some, you know, salary differences there. Is there anything that can be done to maybe, you know, bridge the gap? I'm really interested in PwC, but I also want to, you know, stay mindful of the fact that, you know, money is important, especially during these times, and I'm a struggling student. So we understand all of these things, and I think just initiating that conversation is really the way to go. So I encourage students to bring that up to us. And I mean, sometimes we can do something, other times we can't, but I can tell you at the end of the day, it's just really good experience for you to really negotiate for what you need in order to survive and also thrive in your career. And I really do encourage that you have these conversations.
Quick follow-up on that. What is the best way, or are there some resources that you can recommend where students can research the actual salary ranges for an entry-level position, whether it's tax or audit, or are you able to find that information pretty easily through the PwC website?
So I want to say that we do not have any specific salary numbers on our website, but I know that there's several other websites that they can provide you with a range if you just, you know, type for that. I forget what some of the tools are called. It's been a while since I've used these myself, but as a student, that's what I used. And I thought, okay, they're either going to offer me around this price or similar to that same like salary range. But I will say for me, and I think this is hard to understand when you're a student, you get so, you know, centered around the number that is going to be your salary. And although that is important, and especially if you're putting yourself through school and, you know, you have to pay back those loans, I get it, like all of these things and all of that money is going to matter. But at the end of the day, you also want to think about where you're going to be working long term. And if it makes sense for you to maybe not consider an employer just because at the time they're like $2 to $5 grand difference in a salary, at the end of the day, I can tell you after tax, it really doesn't matter, and it is very minimal. So I tell students it's better to just be upfront with the questions and also consider not just the amount, but where you're going to be working, because in the long term, it really isn't going to matter. We all, you know, adjust with the market. So in the end, no choice that you're making is really going to be wrong, at least for, you know, the big four firms in our space in recruiting.
Got it. So let's take a transition, and because there are questions that are coming up about your specific opportunities, how students can get connected with PwC and the different, you know, internships or full-time positions. And then once Zulika has kind of gone over ways that you can connect directly with PwC and their opportunities, we'll go through the Q&A questions in the queue. And if you have things that pop up, put them in there and we will be sure to try and address them. And so Zulika, it's all you.
Awesome. So I actually did just notice that we did not update the date on one of these, which is like the most important one, which is our fall info session. So instead of Thursday, that was another one that we had for one of my other schools. But for San Jose State, this is going to be taking place on Tuesday. So Tuesday, I believe, is the 15th. Yep, it's the 15th. So that can be really the best place for you to connect with us if you want to network with other professionals and also learn more about each of the lines of service. I highly encourage you to attend that info session, and the time is right. It's just the date that's wrong there. And if you're interested and that works with your schedule, the QR codes that are at the side there, you can scan those with either your camera app, or even if that doesn't work, your Snapchat app will help you get to that, and then you can RSVP and let us know if you can make it. For our fall info session, we're asking that you RSVP no later than Monday at noon. And again, this is probably the best opportunity for you to connect with us, aside from maybe, meet the firms, which is down the line, but definitely the info session is PwC only. So we are really there for you to answer all of your questions, provide you all of the line of service information that you may need. In terms of the opportunities that we're recruiting for in the fall, we do have openings in our core assurance practice, in our tax practice, risk assurance, which is a combination of, our core assurance practice, but more on the IT side of things for all of the MIS or even AIS information systems majors. That's definitely the space for you. And then we do have very limited, but a few positions in cybersecurity and privacy if you're a computer science major, for example. So definitely we'll be highlighting all of these lines of service at that info session. If you are interested and that works for you, definitely encourage you to attend. Coming off of that, we also have an inclusive leadership session coming up on that Friday of next week. And I think for us, that's really our first ever diversity event. It's also our first ever diversity virtual event. So a lot of firsts on that day, but we really wanted to focus on highlighting our inclusion networks at the firm and really showing our students what PwC does in order to make sure that we are being as inclusive as possible and what that looks like for you as you are entering a career with PwC. So highly encourage you to attend that session if you can make it. Some really good breakout discussions are sure to come out of that. If you cannot attend either of those two events, or even if you can, I also would encourage you to sign up for a virtual one-on-one line of service chat. And you can fill out this form here. Those are going to be ongoing. They started earlier this week and they will go through our application deadline of September 22nd. So you are free to continue to keep signing up for those. And what I basically do is ask you for the best times and dates that work with your schedule, and then what line of service you're interested in and the level of the professional that you'd be interested in, talking more with. And then I assign you to that professional and you can schedule a virtual one-on-one chat. So those are all the ways that you can stay connected with us.
Anita, you're on mute.
You might be on mute, Anita.
It's my turn to be on mute. So that was awesome. I was just saying that there's so many different ways for students to still connect with employers, with you, with your team, and then the one-on-one live service chats. If you don't have all of your questions answered today, it sounds like that's a good opportunity to go back in. And for students, I would encourage you to mention that you first heard or got connected to PwC via Zulika and this webinar, so it gives you some context to connect with them so that they know that you are really passionate about following up. At this point, I'm going to transition, and Lisa, maybe you can help me go into the Q&A session. If you raise your hands, we won't, there's like over 100 people in this session, so we won't be answering raised hands. Please type your question directly into the Q&A box, and we will go through those, and I promise we'll try to get to all of them. So we'll just go from the top. The first question is, are there any opportunities, are there major specific requirements for the positions that you're recruiting for? So someone was asking if there's any opportunity for applied math majors.
Yeah, so I will say that some of our opportunities are definitely better tailored with certain majors. But the best way for you to find out if your major is going to be applicable to the opportunity would be going to that pwc.com/campus entry-level jobs page. You can see all of our postings on our main page. It'll tell you what the majors and what requirements we're looking for. But just to quickly highlight for the fall opportunities that I am recruiting for. So for core assurance and tax, obviously I'm looking for an accounting major or even a corporate accounting and finance major, mostly because I'm going to be asking you about that CPA eligibility for the 150 units to be completed by the time that you graduate. So as you can imagine, an applied math major would not be applicable to one of those opportunities, for example. For risk assurance, we will take accounting. We'll also take corporate accounting and finance. I will also take AIS, MIS, or even in certain cases, computer science majors as well, just depending on the background that you have. And for cybersecurity and privacy, again, this is more reserved for maybe our computer science, or even I have seen some engineering majors come through for that based on just their cyber background. So at a high level, that does not sound like applied math fits in any of those, but we definitely do have other opportunities that may fit that, that we might not be recruiting for in the fall. So definitely take a look at our entry-level jobs page, and if something matches your interest, maybe not in the fall, but when we come back in the spring, happy to recruit more there.
Great. So we have a question that's come in about resumes. So first of all, it's a two-part question. First question is, do you recommend strictly one-page resume? So I guess you can just answer to that question first.
Yes, I definitely want to highlight the one page. I know it's hard. A lot of you want to put every awesome thing about you and all your dreams and aspirations on there, but definitely keep it to one page as much as you can. The only instance where I've seen it go a little bit over was like a page and a half. We didn't usually see that type of format, but sometimes we understand that it can flow over, but do your very best with just keeping it to one page as much as possible.
Perfect. So it looks like the second part question disappeared. Anita has fast fingers here. So I'm gonna go on. No, it's okay, it's okay. I'm gonna go on and ask the next question.
I think the second part was, if you have more than one page worth of information, basically what should you prioritize in that one page?
Yeah, so I would say if maybe you just have a ton of work experience, I would say maybe tailoring your resume to the opportunity that you're looking to apply to. So say you're interested in maybe core assurance for PwC, I think the best way to tailor that would really be go through everything that's listed on your work experience, or maybe the lengthier portion of that more than one page content, and really find how is that applicable to the opportunity, because more likely than not, you want to include it, but sometimes you can live without it and it's going to be totally fine. So I will say don't get rid of the content because you've already taken the time to prepare it, but maybe keep like a main copy and then keep separate copies depending on what opportunity you're looking to apply to.
Perfect.
Right.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to combine two questions, Lisa, because there's several that are related to international students.
Okay.
So I think we can maybe knock a few out in one, so to speak, but do you hire international students? Do you consider sponsorship or for visa status if they are going beyond the CPT and doing OPT?
Yeah, so this is a great question. So unfortunately at this time, PwC is not able to sponsor. The only group that we are still open for sponsorship opportunities would be if you're looking to go into our cybersecurity and privacy group. But for the other three, unfortunately, we cannot offer sponsorship at this time for either internship or full-time opportunities.
Thank you.
Okay.
So your turn.
It's my turn. Okay. Thank you. Okay. This one is about, looks like for internships. So the question is, would PwC be deciding on and inviting internship applicants now to interview, or all that would only happen after applications deadline, or I guess after the deadline for applications?
Yeah, so for us, our application deadline is on the 22nd. So you have until then at midnight to submit your application, although I highly encourage you to do it the day before latest, just in case. And after that, in terms of when you'll hear back no later than October 8th, since that's when our interviews are going to start to, be conducted based on whatever line of service you're going to be interviewing for. But they are starting as early as, I believe, the 8th or the 9th. So latest, you should hear back by like October 7th or 8th, again, depending on whatever line of service. And we'll go through the interview process there. So it gives us a little over a week for us to sort through all of our applicants and make our final selections for those interviews.
Perfect.
Awesome. And then the next question is actually a really good one as far as how to demonstrate specific skill sets, but asking how can incoming interns and associates demonstrate teamwork and leadership qualities in the Zoom environment?
Yeah, that's a really great question, actually. So I would say really coming in just with an open mind that you're going to be, again, in this virtual environment is already putting you way at the top. I say that because a lot of your team is not going to be as young and hip, so to speak. So some of the older members on your team might not really know how to handle a virtual environment, or maybe there's something that you can share that you don't think is new, but no one on your team has ever heard of it before. So I always encourage our incoming interns and associates to really bring that innovation and that youth through that innovation with them when they start on the job, because something that you might think in our generation is pretty common and you're like, okay, that's not a new skill, like everyone can do that. You'd be surprised if you suggest it to your team, they probably have never heard it before. And if they have and they're implementing it, then maybe they can put you in charge of that task in that virtual setting. So I always tell, incoming students, definitely bring that innovation. It can't hurt to suggest things to your team. And even, if you want to be the wellness promoter, similarly to myself on my own team, in line with our Be Well, Work Well initiative of just being flexible and incorporating wellness, I'm the person who decides which meetings are going to be walking or not when I'm scheduling my meetings. So even something that simple, right, that you wouldn't think is that important, that's really a great skill to have, because I think having that team member on your team who reminds you, hey, move around, get up and, stretch or get water, those are things that really help, I think, in you bringing your best self to work and also being very unique in the way that you do that.
Perfect. So the next question is, how does your company review applications received via referrals as compared to normal applications submitted? How are candidates picked up, and are there any priorities given?
Yeah, so that's a great question. We definitely do take referrals. So the way that I look at applications is, for us, it's really an Excel pull from our system, and it shows me all of the applicants. If there's a special referral, they'll get, a unique tag to their name, and it'll let us know, okay, is this an internal referral? Who is referring it, so that we can follow up with that person. But I will say that referral doesn't guarantee that the candidate is going to be selected just because it's a referral. We're still, very mindful of considering, is this the right candidate? Do they stand out when compared to other candidates that we've already selected? We really take a full view and a full inclusive view at all of our candidate pool before we make these selections. So although referrals are, a positive, because that's an additional plus on you being potentially selected, we're still comparing you to the candidate pool altogether and seeing if it really makes sense to move you along in the process.
Perfect.
Great. You're doing really awesome with time and answering your questions, Zulika, because I know that we have about 10 minutes
Awesome.
and we're down to 2 questions. So yay.
Perfect.
So the next one is, what are your thoughts on applying to different positions at the same time? And we get this question a lot. Like, if I feel like I'm qualified for 2 different positions, does it benefit me to apply to both, or should I focus on one versus the other?
Yeah, I'm so glad that this came up, because I was planning to plug that in somewhere towards the end. So glad someone did that for me. Thank you. So I would definitely encourage that you select the one opportunity that you're not only most interested in, but makes the most sense for you. And I know that's challenging, because it's a big decision, first of all, to choose what line of service is right for you. But I can only consider you for one of the applications that I see come through. So maybe you're that person who applies to 3 lines of service, and you think, okay, if I don't get one, it still increases my chances, I'll get picked for one of the other 2. That's actually not how it works. I'm just gonna email you and say, hey, person who applied to 3 things, unfortunately, I can only consider you for one, so which one is it gonna be? We work in that way, not by line of service specifically, so I can't have you interviewing through different lines of service. You're ultimately going to have to make a choice on one, and I can only move forward with that one application. So if you are in between, you know, deciding what line of service you'd like to apply to and just need some more insight, then would encourage you to really find that time to, again, attend our events and sign up for these chats and talk to individuals from the different lines of service to get that insight that you need to make that decision, because at the end of the day, I can only consider you for the one.
Perfect. So how long should I wait to reapply is one student is asking the question. So if they apply.
So would this,
yeah, so basically
would
if they
this mean
apply,
like they applied in the fall?
it doesn't say, but we can pretend that they applied in the fall. Like how long should they wait before they reapply?
So I'm assuming you're asking reapply as in you maybe don't get selected for the fall. So if that is the case and you apply in the fall and unfortunately you don't end up getting selected, we do come back in the spring to recruit for some of our early ID opportunities. So more on the sophomore and junior side of things for internships. And then if we have any still remaining needs for full-time associate positions or internships, we also bring those with us in the spring, although it's looking unlikely. But if that is the case, you are open to reapply that following semester if we do have an opportunity that aligns with what you were interested in initially.
Perfect.
Okay.
No.
Another question, and this is a common one too. How important are cover letters? Do you review them, and any feedback on cover letters?
Yes. So lucky for you, we do not take cover letters. So that is one less thing to prepare. We just look at your resume and ask that that is the only attachment that you submit. For us, it's not so much that cover letters aren't important, but we've found that they don't really add anything. So we took that whole, you know, idea of it out of our process. So we only require a resume from you when you're applying.
That's a plus.
Yes.
Definitely. One less thing to do.
That's right. And then the last question that we have posted is a question about the cybersecurity internship. So there's I think several potential candidates here that have an interest in that cybersecurity internship. What's the best way for them to apply?
So again, going to our entry-level jobs page, if you search for the cybersecurity and privacy group in that search box up at the top, you will see all of the postings that are available for cybersecurity and privacy. And when you click on those, it'll go into more detail around the job requirements, your major requirements, and then it'll have a link for you to apply. So that's definitely the best place for you to submit your application through.
Okay, I think we have it. Well, there's a couple more, but I think a lot of these questions that are coming in are specifics about looking for interns only for fall versus full-time recruitment. So maybe just clarifying the recruitment cycle. And then anyone looking for a software engineering role. So you will have to, you know, part of what Zulika had mentioned earlier is really doing your research. And so going to those the careers pages and actually looking for what's open will give you an idea of what they're actively hiring for. So if you send her an email about that, she may think that you didn't do your research already. So please do that, because that will help you ask questions that are more in line with maybe preparing for behavioral interviews or things that might be easier for her to kind of know that you've done your research. But as far as the fall recruitment, is it specifically for interns only, Zulika, or are you also looking at full-time candidates?
Yeah, so that's a great question that I can highlight. And as you can see on the slide here, we have all of our programs and the timing of when you would be applying. So in the fall, we typically come in and we look for the advanced internship and then the associate level positions. So our associate level is our full-time positions. If you're a senior last year, ready to graduate and get started with adult life, that's what I'm recruiting for in the fall. The advanced internship is tailored for juniors. So I also recruit for that in the fall. And then we do also recruit for our START internship. So if you're a sophomore or a junior in a 5-year program, then you definitely qualify for the START internship, which is specifically our diversity internship program. So if you're a veteran, a student with a disability, or one of the underrepresented minority groups in just the professional services industry, then you're definitely eligible for START. So we do come in the fall specifically to recruit for those 3 opportunities. When we come back in the spring, it's more of our early ID recruiting. So again, those sophomores and maybe some of the earlier juniors for our Elevate Summer Leadership Program. We continue our START recruiting efforts. And then if we have, again, any remaining needs, which usually we don't, but if we do from our advanced or associate openings that were not filled in the fall, we bring those with us in the spring.
Okay, so we are at time. If you do have continued questions, Zulika has been kind to share her contact information. I think if you, I'll go back a slide just so that you can see her email. Zulika, are you okay if they send direct questions to you if things pop up after the webinar?
Yeah, definitely. Feel free to reach out or connect on LinkedIn. I'm open to either of those 2.
Thank you so much. And please do your research before you email her. If you ask her a question that you can find on the career website, she's not going to be happy. No, I'm just kidding. I'm sure she'll be very patient with you. So Zulika, thank you so much for spending your lunch with us on our very first Employer Insights. Students, thank you for sharing your questions, and it was really insightful and helpful for us as well. You know, Lisa and I work directly with students and employers, but it's always nice to be able to kind of be able to directly share those questions with an employer who's willing to give so much of their time and information. Also for students, please give us your feedback if you'd like us to continue doing this type of programming. We need to kind of hear from you as to if this is helpful or not. This is our feedback survey. It's just a bit.ly CCSJSU generic, meaning it's a generic survey that we use for events. And you can actually be entered into win a $20 gift prize. So if you participate in that, you can definitely get something in return. And be sure to connect and attend future events. And that is all we have for today. So thank you so much, everyone. And Zulika, we hope that you hire lots of Spartans.
That is our hope.
All right, thanks everyone, and stay safe.